Hi, it's Des here. I'm in Pittsburg, in America. I'm at Share 2019. I have the pleasure of being joined by Greg Lotko, who's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Mainframe division of Broadcom. Great to see you again, Greg. How are you?
Great to see you. Great to see you in person.
I know.
We've done podcasts before, but this is this is live.
This is live, and I was actually talking to one of your colleagues, and they asked me how long I'd known you. I said, well, actually, I've never actually met you in person. They couldn't believe it because it was like we were long lost friends.
He's even better live, folks.
Thank you. So maybe just very briefly, can you maybe just give us an outline of kind of what your role inside the team at Broadcom is about, and what, not so much a day in the life cycle, but what some of the current challenges you're being faced with are about, and then we'll come back into where we are at Share and the event itself.
Sure. I'm running the overall mainframe business at Broadcom. So one of the things that I think is uniquely different from a lot of other companies out there, software companies in general, I'm not just talking about mainframe, is you see a lot of companies where they organize or run the business where the engineering and maybe offering management is in one team, and that would be what the general manager is. And then because they're sitting in a larger organization, they may have a services organization or an education organization or a support organization that supports the larger overall organization and runs as kind of a horizontal versus the vertical for the divisions. Broadcom's philosophy and approach is actually very different. They actually talk about their divisions internally, and sometimes you may even hear us talk about it externally. We run them like franchises. So their philosophy is they want these businesses to thrive and survive on their own, to kind of prove that they can be successful in a durable nature. And I think we've talked about that before. By durability, they want businesses that can be number one or number two in their space for a decade or more. So one of the things that's really nice about their philosophy around that is they take all of the resources, all the people, all the organizations, the services teams, the education team, the support team, and they put them directly in that division, and they really run it as one overall P&L versus the slicing and the dicing of budgetary constraints and all those types of things. They're thinking, well, should I spend this dollar on services or spend this on marketing, and somebody having a fiefdom and owning that budget. We are focused with clarity on mainframe and all things mainframe, such that the entire marketing organization, the engineering organization, the architecture organization, offering management, strategy, services, support, education, everything mainframe sits in one division with all folks focused on helping the mainframe divisions be successful. And how do you do that? But drive that value to the customers and have customers be successful with the products.
I love it. Well, there's no secret that as a brand, Broadcom itself has had a long pedigree of success. And I think if anything, what this model does, it sets you up to be successful because you've got the freedom to be successful. As you said, you're not hamstrung to these vertical silos who could potentially trip you up, which other large organizations think there's value in, but in the end it does trip them up because somebody has reins on part of the organization they shouldn't have.
You can end up sub-optimizing for measurements of a subcomponent where what your goal is overall is it's the overall business, it's the overall mainframe business. So even if you take it down to the level of the leaders and the team members on the team, they are thinking customer first, they're thinking mainframe first. And if the best thing to do is to deploy a person from the services team or the support team or this team or that team, because they're the one who's knowledgeable or they're the one who can work with the customer the best to help them be successful, you're not negotiating across arbitrary lines or organization structures. We're just bringing it all together with that common focus. So that's the part that, you could say what keeps me up at night. That's actually one of the things that I find extremely liberating and extremely galvanizing and focusing across the team of no confusion about any kind of arbitrary measurement, just focus on helping customers be successful.
I love it. Now we're at Share 2019 here in the amazing city of Pittsburg.
And Go Steelers.
Well, indeed, and it's kind of interesting that we're in the city of Big Iron, talking about Big Iron and mainframes. Can I get your general sense of what you've experienced in the last couple of days and your general sort of feel for the event? I've had a great time. This is my first Share in general. I've actually been in the city when the event's been running, just haven't had a chance to drop into it. The thing for me is that it's supported and sponsored and funded by vendors without actually becoming a big sales pitch. It's more of a birds of a feather, meeting of the minds, networking, and all those great things we want that often events aspire to be, but then end up getting tripped up in the sales piece. What's your general take on the event so far this year, and what are some of the highlights you've had in the last couple of days?
So there's a ton of energy and enthusiasm here. You actually, if you're looking at the background, it looks like it's kind of a lull right now. That's honestly because we're filming this while sessions are going on, so everybody's off getting that education and training. I would say the thing about Share that I find really interesting is there is some pretty deep education and sharing from a pardon the pun, sharing, right?
It's a
from a birds of a feather, and from people sharing their experiences and talking about technology, but it's really talking about it from a practical application of it, not a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Let me give you the marketing spin on my product, but it's also equal parts about community. The thing that I think you see really amped up this year, and we've certainly been part of it, is the youth, the energy, the enthusiasm, all of the new hires that are flooding into this space, because we know people are going to be retiring, so that we want to have overlap and train those folks and bring them up to speed. You see a lot of those folks here, the younger folks interacting. There was a panel in the keynote this morning, right, where they had a number of young individuals from JPMC, large financial institution in the United States, talking about their experiences, and then some of the vendors talking about their experience in developing skills. So it's very exciting to be here, and I think Share really does provide that balance. Companies want to see that you're here learning things and learning how to be more successful in the technical application of the skills, but there's also that value of learning from people who've traveled this path and their experiences and what has worked or not worked technologically, as well as in developing a career and advancing and having longevity in the mainframe space.
I do love seeing all these fresh faces and millennials, as they describe themselves. I've had a couple of your participants through the last 7-week program within the Vitality program, through the mainframe orientation and the ASE program, and then the mentoring that goes out to getting them a job. And they were actually just full of energy about what this had made possible for them, either coming from degrees or other backgrounds where they hadn't necessarily thought about going to a mainframe career path. Now that they've gone down that route, they're pleasantly surprised in so many ways. And I guess that brings me back to that whole underpinning foundation that, strategically, as an organization, Broadcom's been working a lot on the whole modernization of the mainframe platform, the optimization of operating and running it, and providing services and value into that, and particularly security around that. And I guess the ASCs plugging into that are learning that there's a long, multi-decade lineage and pedigree in the platform, but that the new emerging challenges with IoT and 5G and overlapping point solutions and the cloud above that's creating risks and issues that we haven't had to face at this scale before, and security becomes a big issue, whether it's data you've got yourselves or data that's outside your organization. I think the ASC's bringing that energy into it, kind of bring a little bit of new breath of fresh air, if you like, into helping solve some of those problems. Give us a little insight into the kind of that journey, the strategic focus around the modernization of the platform, the optimization and the security focus. What's new and exciting in that space?
Yeah, and I think it kind of as an intro, I think the having all these new individuals in the space also brings you new perspective and new ideas, because you're not constrained with thinking about how you used to think you would solve it or what you think the problem is. And I think our approach is balance, and I think it's much more realistic than some of the things that we and others have tried to do in the mainframe space for years. Oftentimes you would hear people talk about agile practices or DevOps and DevSecOps and bringing that into the mainframe space. And for many, many years, people tried to do that by providing technologies that would give you that capability, but in a very mainframe way, right? And what we've really been talking about and what we're actually manifesting in our products now, we think about it as open, flexible, and optimized, right? And the open is really the start of it. There's people that are coming out of school, or even people that have been in the industry for a number of years, that have a paradigm or a perspective from a distributed bent or from an open source bent, that have been using technologies and tools, and they know what DevSecOps means to them. They don't want to lose the value of the underlying mainframe. It is the most secure platform on the planet. They want to be able to press down on that resiliency, that stability, that throughput, all those itties that make it mainframe, but they want to be able to relate to it or access or interact with it in the same way that they do across other platforms. So that is something that I think is very different about our philosophy, and others are seeing the light. I mean, we've been working with IBM and Rocket and contributing to the open mainframe project. The idea that we need to open up the access to this platform to interact with these other technologies around the world and in the ecosystem, while not exposing it to additional risk, so that others, developers, people in IT operations that have these other experiences can press down and get the value of the mainframe, bring their skill set that they have, bring their paradigm and even their thoughts, and figure out, well, how can I do that in a mainframe environment without necessarily having to learn new tools, but to preserve the value of all that investment that's gone into not just the products from the vendors, but think about all the code and all the automation and the operations and all the things that customers around the world have done. They don't have to rip and replace that. They really just need to be able to interact with it and tie it together through open APIs. So if you think about what we've done with Brightside and contributing that into Zoe and opening up and offering enterprise support for all the components across Zoe, that's what we're really bringing to this platform. And then it's balance. It's the idea that we are not just investing in new technologies or new capabilities in new products, right? I mean, we understand why businesses do that, because you want to grow your revenue stream, and you grow that revenue stream by providing more value to customers. So we do have new products and new capabilities that we think are fabulous. But that balance, preserving that investment and expanding and getting more out of that investment, says, let's do that development, let's do some of that focus and that enhancement in core products that people have had for many years. They know, they love, they trust. Open those up, make it so that you can interact, so that you can press on it, so that you can use, Git and Jenkins and Gulp and all that with things like Endeavor or IDMS or Datacom. So we're investing in both sides to really help customers continue to get that return on that investment that they made over many years with the automation and everything, but make it easier for a broader set of skills to interact and get the value.
I've had some great conversations around some of those points with your fresh faces, your ASCs. In fact, even at the opening dinner at the Andy Warhol Museum, which was phenomenal, I thought it was actually rather fortuitous that here I was talking to one of your millennial generation ASCs, and we were talking about how the mainframe is really just another set of APIs. It's a series of services. And everything that he had been used to out of school and his own coding and throwing things up and other third parties that we won't name, when we got down to it, I said, so really when you think about this, I mean, it's really, in some ways to me, it's like the world's biggest Linux box, but you're really just calling services via APIs. And you can see this, he's like, yeah, actually I hadn't really thought about that. It's like, well, you're talking about it, you're saying it, that's really what you're doing. It's like, it doesn't matter whether it's a public cloud, a hybrid cloud, or a mainframe platform, you're requesting services and stuff behind that to instantiate a capability. And it was quite an interesting discussion.
And even the virtualization is there.
All of that, right? All of that. And I thought it was really funny that we were in the Andy Warhol, so, one of the most out there places on the planet to be here, one of my bucket list locations. And here we are talking about the modernization that's on the mainframe with something that's been around for like 60 plus years. And yet here's the next generation of developer and systems person just taking for granted that they're going to treat it like an API, treat it like an endpoint and deploy to it, which is pretty cool. Now,
I find it bizarre, by the way, that you and I are having that experience with the younger generation getting into the platform, and we actually spend time talking about what they don't know and what they're learning and what they're discovering they can do. And that was us 20, 30 years ago. So you think about this platform that's been around for 60 years, right? Some of the technologies, right? I mean, all the way back to 1959, and then the first 360 and 64. But you're talking 55, 60 years here, right? And when we came into the space, and we were meeting the folks that had been around for years, they were looking at us the same way. And I mean, I had only ever had one mainframe class in college, but we were smart, right? We thought we were smart. They weren't
absolutely.
so sure. But we learned. We brought new ideas and new thoughts and ideas and ways to interact with it. And there were some things we did better. There were some things we learned we weren't as smart as we thought we were, right? But now apologize, folks.
That's okay.
I don't ever turn my phone off because customers could call, but I know who that is, and it's actually not a customer.
A billion-dollar deal always takes precedence. But you're absolutely right.
So the reality is, we're really just now getting to see that in our life at this point where we're sitting on the other side of the equation, and I think it's extremely important for us now as the next guard of stewards to remember that experience and to remember the great ideas we had and the value we brought to the platform, and encourage these younger folks that are coming in that, hey, you can make this your own too.
It does. It almost behooves us to do that because somebody gave us the opportunity and entrusted us. We now need to do that with the next generation as they will going forward. What was interesting is I saw in the eyes of a couple of the ASCs I had the opportunity to have on camera this morning that that had already become a realization for them. They'd worked that out themselves without someone explaining to them. And when I was talking to them and I asked them a question around, well, what happens next? One of them said that they're also now looking at, well, how do they then help other people take the journey they've just had? So like now it's not just generational, it's within generations that they're helping each other.
It's the 32-year-old or the 34-year-old saying, hey, I'm the old guard now. And you're like, wow, that must make me ancient. But they even have it fresher in their minds, the experience that they've gone through, and you can see the desire, the energy, the enthusiasm around paying it back, giving it, paying it forward, going right in, and it's fabulous.
I think it's going to shorten that cycle. We went through it sort of, I guess, life length career paths. People before us that was often multiple career paths. Now I see that compressing. I think
we also saw downturns in the economy that meant there wasn't necessarily so much hiring, right?
True.
So I think we had a longer gap, but you see it happening on a more regular basis now.
So I see a whole range of trends are like, shortened time to value in organizations, short time to market. Now I see a shorter time in sort of onboarding the fresh new faces. So I think those spikes and troughs that we talked about are sort of going to level out to a much more sustainable linear growth model, I think, and certainly with the program you're developing, and congratulations on building that, and its journey from Prague to the US and I'm sure back around the world. Now you attended a Women in IT breakfast this morning.
I did.
Which one of your ASCs was actually talking about how inspired she was with that because she finally got a chance to meet not just other mainframers but other women in business. Give me your general thoughts on what that was like. And
I think for me, I thought it was fabulous. So, and I also particularly liked the way they did it. They actually had they had us all gather our meals and come in and sit down and breakfast in a round table. And then there was a couple of people who spoke for not more than about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we went back to our own device of mingling. And at the table I happened to be sitting around, we actually went around the table and had each person talk about how they got into IT, what attracted them, and
fantastic,
and how they got into it, who encouraged them, what were their observations, and it was very interesting. I mean, if you listened, while there were, of course, differences based on where you grew up, or it was a teacher, or it was a parent, or an uncle, or an aunt, or whomever, there was an awful lot of commonality. There was an awful lot of sitting around the table of saying, hey, I wasn't so sure I was going to be interested in this, but once I got exposed and I got involved, I liked it. We did also talk a little bit about careers and advancement, and there was, I think, a commonality or an affinity of people that maybe hadn't been as vocal at one point in their career about what it was that they hoped to accomplish or what it was that they were going after. And I think between people earlier in their career and people who were later in their career had been successful, hearing that those people that were successful went through the same set of emotions, thought, and journey that they did, I think really was inspiring and gave comfort and confidence to those folks. So I was really energized by it. We actually had a couple of our Vitality residencies, folks that walked over to our table afterwards, and we introduced them. And so that's an interesting thing. We talked about the associate software engineer thing that we're doing, but we're also running an investment ahead for customers to go through this side by side with our folks, and then they'll be deployed out to the customer. And we're doing this in very different creative ways. A lot of the times we're actually funding it in its entirety. There are some customers who have said, oh, no, I identified somebody who's over in distributed or storage or somewhere else that we want to bring into mainframe. Can they participate? We're like, Sure, the more the merrier.
Brilliant.
So we had a couple of examples, one that we were training for a customer, another one that is actually an employee of the customer but is getting to meet our folks, and we also said, hey, why don't we have all our ASCs and Vitality residencies who you mentioned it. They've been here for 7 weeks for training. They graduate on Friday.
I know, that's
so
exciting.
I'm going to be at our lab in Pittsburgh for that graduation. But they also themselves spoke fabulously about what an experience Share was. To be able to get the interaction with people through different points and phases of their career with different responsibilities, they found really valuable being here.
So my last question for you, I mean, amazing event, great turnout, lots of birds of a feather, networking all over the place, the exciting focus on women in IT, which Broadcom as an organization and your senior executives across the organization supporting that whole project. What comes next? So after the event, everyone goes back, they've had their networking, they're all connected on LinkedIn, and they're following the hashtag SHAREpgh on social media during the conversation. What's over the horizon for you? In the next sort of 3 to 5 years, what comes next after this event? What are the, once things quiet down? I mean, obviously we want people to join the conversation on social media, we want them to reach out through LinkedIn and follow the business page. But what's the next natural step that you're already focused on beyond the event as an organization?
So I think it's funny, especially in technology, people like to talk about vision and strategy and the next to build on the build and the build. And look, we're going to keep investing around mainframe operational intelligence and analytics and all these types of capabilities that help not only the experienced but the novice person interacting with the mainframe be more successful, to avoid issues before they happen. And I could wax eloquent about that, but that's really a technological, you should be continuously innovating, you should be doing agile methodologies, and we're doing that. But I think the more interesting thing is the constant. I think the constant, and I think this should be generally constant in business in general, is if an entire organization focuses on helping customers be successful, everything else will fall into place.
Right.
If you help your customers be successful, they'll want to use your products more, they'll want to do more business with you. So that's a single focusing thing, right? So if you think about all the things we're doing, expanding our relationship with Share, we're expanding our relationship with iDoug, we're still out there at the industry conferences, the user groups, IBM Stink, we're actually at Z Technical University. Those are all different, I think about it as a bouquet of flowers. They're different ways to get to the constituency to help them learn about and appreciate your technology and be successful with it. We're going to continue to focus on those investments. We're going to continue to focus on getting out to our customers directly in the geographies, to doing things like this, to help get the word out. But the single ongoing unifying focus is really to focus on, in everything we do, to figure out how we're going to drive greater value to our customers. Help your customers be successful, drive greater value to them, and if you've got that in your DNA, in your heart, in your soul, in your mission, everything else falls into place. So I think, you think what's next? You said 2, 3, 5 years from now. I think there's never losing sight and focus of that's what it's all about. It's about customers being successful for business goals with technology. You do that, you do all the other innovation and all that, but keep that true north on the compass and things fall into place.
Well, that's very much in line with your whole double down on the space mantra. And I think it's beyond doubt that if you can create value, money invariably follows value. And I think that's something that as an organization with your previous lineage in the CA world and now in the Broadcom world, that just seems to be built into the DNA of the human beings that you attract or have achieved to bring on board. Greg, it's been fantastic to see you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for making so much time to catch up with me. It's been great to meet you in person finally after
a lot of fun.
talking a number of times, and look forward to having you on the show again soon.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You take care.
Thanks, folks.